ownership is where we have to start with everything that we do in life.
Ownership is the intersection point between accountability and responsibility, where we've chosen to take responsibility for something.
I want everybody to walk away thinking, how can I show up as the best version of myself today? Every single day, you are waking up and your brain is priming you for how do you want to think and feel today. Now, priming is a word that I've used or I've cloned, but we've heard it all over for the eons of time. Priming is just the preparation for what it is that's going to come.
What is it that you want to be? Who is it that you want to become? What is it that you're called to step into? Because whatever belief you have of yourself, is it that you're not far enough along? Is it that you're not good enough? Is it that you're not worthy? That is the anchor that's holding you back to become the person that you were ultimately created to be, to impact the people who you were meant to be the miracle for.
This is the Own It Show, where we tell stories of how everyday people made ownership theirs.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Rothling-Schofer, and it is so great to be with you all. And if you are new here, you know what we do. We tell stories of people who've made ownership theirs and have realized a life that is different, because we know that success is different, but it starts with becoming somebody new. It doesn't start with the how, it starts with the who. And my friends, when you look in the mirror, that is the who that you need to become. And so there's over 300 other episodes that you can dive into, solo podcasts with me, episodes with great guests similar to who we have today. And the cool part about this is that you have full access to them. And so if there's something that resonates with you, if there's something that moves your heart, if there's something that has a little flicker in your soul today, I want you to leave a comment, write a review, or share it with somebody you love, because that is the way that we reach more people. And so today's guest, I am so excited because today's guest is somebody who I met about 6 months ago. And you guys have been blessed to be exposed to some of my most recent friends that I've had, especially in the last 2 years. I think my relationships that I've fostered and founded over the last 2 years have just been exponentially elevated in terms of impact, in terms of depth, in terms of quality, of people who have lived that ownership mentality, that ownership life. And this man is no different. Rudi's somebody who has just taken this gift that he has to allow people to change their mindset, to change their thought process, to change how they see things, and being able to help people transform from the inside out in the way that they live life. And so being able to pour into people from a leadership standpoint, being able to pour into people from a mindset standpoint, being able to change people's thought processes so that they can realize new and different things. And you know how powerful that word different is here for us. He's a keynote speaker. He's an author. He's a family man. He's a father. He's a husband. He's a coach. But most importantly, he is just a incredible, incredible man that is here to do impact. And so, Rudi, it's a pleasure to have you on the Own It Show.
Justin, thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate you. And I just want to start off by saying how incredibly proud I am of you. At the time of this recording, man, you are a freaking best-selling author. Talking about ownership, and then you go and put a book out on the topic. And not only does it debut as one of the top books in the country, man, it's just incredible. And I know it's just the beginning of the journey, man.
I appreciate you, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to go along with the ride, and I know you have a podcast called the Empowered Podcast that you were so gracious to have me on, and anybody here who likes this episode, I highly suggest you go check that out. But I want to dive in, Rudi, and really kind of talk about this journey for you, because when we met back at Tamara Andrus's event in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the way that you talk, it's not a typical keynote that a lot of people would expect, where it's flipping PowerPoint to PowerPoint and people are reading off a screen, and it's very much so a personal journey that you go on with each member there, and you really start to understand a deep inward feel. And I want you to kind of just give our listeners a feel of what it would be like to be in the room, a feel of what it would be like to experience the power that Rudi is able to help you unleash in yourself when sitting in that room.
You know, I love that we're on the Own It show talking about taking a higher level of ownership, because, you know, ownership is where we have to start with everything that we do in life, you know, and I love that when I have the opportunity to be in front of an audience, we talk about accountability and we get people to take accountability for their lives, not only for where they are, but for everywhere that they've been, and most importantly, where it is that they're wanting to go. And the single differentiator in anybody's life is how they choose to react to what has happened to their life. We can hear these platitudes of like, you know, life is happening for you, life is serving you, but if you don't fully understand how life is serving and preparing you for the person that you get to become, then you don't have the power or the potential to create that shift and driving a life where, using your words now, by design, deciding who do you want to be and how do you want to show up. And so for me, when I'm on stage, I love to have a conversation that speaks into the individual inside the room. And I love that you recognize it. It's the first time somebody's articulated it like that to me in this format. But to get each person to really have an inner dialogue with themselves and not be so fixated on somebody that is speaking to them, but rather they hear the words and they have a conversation with themselves and they start asking themselves like, wow, you know, if somebody else has had an experience and that experience was bad in the moment, but it turned out to be really good and it served the person that they became, what about the things that I've gone through? What about those moments that I'm going through right now? And if I could create a change, which I love to remind people that you can, then what would you want to change? And so it creates that inner shift inside each person, because we need to take accountability for where we are, and then we need to do something with that. With human behavior, it's fascinating. People don't ever do anything unless they fully understand what is in it for them. And my intention every time I'm speaking to people is to create this inner force that goes from inside. That's why our podcast is called The Empowered Life, because you get to have the inner power as opposed to this external force, which is empowerment. You go to a conference, you get motivated. There's this intrinsic external force that's saying you can do anything. And then you leave and then you don't have that support and you go back to being who you were. But if you can get people to understand what is in it for them, and that while they're sitting in that room, they can take ownership and accountability for the thought, the vision, the goal, the dream that they want to have, it changes how they show up. Now they can actually see themselves doing something differently. They can feel themselves doing something differently, and then their behaviors are going to be very, very different when they leave.
It's so true, because at the end of the day, I always say that ownership is the intersection point between accountability and responsibility, where we've chosen to take responsibility for something, we've said we want something different, but yet we've also put the action steps in place to hold us accountable to that once we actually step into something new. Because if you just do half of the job, you're going to wind up either the person who says, I want to take responsibility for everything, but then there's no planning, there's no execution, and there's always an excuse as to why it didn't happen. Or you've got somebody who set up all the accountability metrics, but then it's always somebody else's fault why they actually didn't step up and finish the job. And so you have to make sure that it's a holistic, full circle intervention, while also realizing that who we believe we are will never overcome the results in which we get. So we will never believe ourselves to be less worthy than love and find ourselves in a loving relationship. We will never see ourselves as we will never be able to not see ourselves as a fit person and ultimately have a great workout and nutrition routine. Like, we have to see ourselves and believe ourselves to be this person before we can even start to develop the habits and behaviors to do this, because confidence at the end of the day is just building undeniable evidence that we are who we say we are. And we have to continue to create these lifestyles and these changes around that. And I think you do such a great job of this when you're in the room with people at a mass scale, and especially working with people one-on-one, being able to do this in your workshops that you do. These are the things that people leave and create real change in, because that's where everything starts. And so I'd love you to kind of go back for our audience and this thought process for you, the way in which you've put it together, the way in which you've now curated this, the journey that you've been on, it wasn't just born like this. Rudi didn't see this from an age of 5 and all of a sudden become a speaker at 15. And he's the guy in high school that's telling everybody, hey, believe in yourself. Look in the mirror. That's the person that you need to ultimately speak to. What was your journey to being able to understand your inner dialogue and change your inner dialogue with yourself so that you could ultimately become this version of you that now you get to teach other people how to do this?
You know, I had such an interesting experience that has so beautifully and uniquely qualified me to help people move forward in life, because at every turn I was reminded I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy, I didn't have enough money, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good looking enough, I didn't have enough muscles, I wasn't tall enough, I wasn't athletic enough. And I constantly had these reaffirming personalities. I'm going to refer to them as personalities that came through my life. At 6 years old, a teacher said, oh, you're stupid, and sit in the stupid chair. And so I immediately believed I was stupid. So when I went to school, I acted stupid, showed up as a stupid kid. When they asked a question, I wouldn't raise my hand because I didn't want to get the answer wrong, because I didn't want to have my feelings hurt. You know, when I wanted to play sports, a teacher said, oh, you're clumsy. And then I just labeled myself as clumsy and stopped showing up to sporting events because I didn't want to feel that humiliation. Whereas what's the crazy thing is I always knew who I wanted to be. You know, at 16, a motivational teacher, a speaker came to speak at our school. And, you know, he was a business coach in South Africa. And he came in to motivate the school, and we were all sitting in a gymnasium. And as he took the stage, in that moment, I knew, man, that is what I want to do with my life. But that wasn't the first time I ever had the thought of my mission or purpose or passion being to create impact out and in the world. You know, we were, I think, about 11 or 12 years old, and the school had these accolades that were handed out, and you could be named or picked to be like a prefect, which was like a leadership role in the school, and you would then have to make sure you govern a certain corridor, and if people are going on breaks, that you funnel out the classrooms first, you keep order and discipline, and you make sure people's shirts are tucked in, and very military style school. But it was a very high achieving point to be named a prefect. Well, I was named prefect at that point, and being a prefect at such a young age, I wanted to make sure that I was being the motivating, inspiring guy that I could be. But I didn't believe I was capable. That wasn't possible for me, that nobody would listen to me. And I continued to play that narrative of not good enough, not worthy. And I created additional results to show up in my life that way. Like so many people, I placed my value and my worth into, well, I need to make money. And you know, if I could make money, then people would respect me. And so at a young age of 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, I committed to, I'm going to leave school and I'm going to create wealth. And I'm going to show everybody that I am good enough and I am worthy. And I eventually achieved a tremendous amount of success. And I say that because success is marginal. But for me, at 25 years old, I was very wealthy. I had a lot of money in the bank. I owned multiple businesses. I had all the things that you would think a 25-year-old kid would find validation in, especially coming from, you know, an environment where we didn't have enough money. We didn't have the nicest things. And man, I still felt like that 6-year-old boy. I still didn't feel good enough, still didn't feel worthy. Even though I had all of these things externally that should say, hey, you are good enough and you are worthy. But, you know, that moment again was another catalyst that was just giving me the validation that I am good enough and I am worthy. And it was like a tipping point for me that supported me in starting to take stock of my life and looking for evidence of, you know, am I worthy? And you know, do I have something that's worthy of celebrating? Is the teacher right that I'm stupid? And I was like, well, if I own all these companies, I can't be stupid. If I have millions in the bank, I can't be stupid. If I have this and this, I can't be stupid. But the other side of that was I also got to see the lack of the quality in my life. Terrible relationships, girlfriends that were cheating on me, friends that were stealing money from me. I had all these situations where I was allowing people to take advantage of me. And that was the next layer of self-worth that really had to come in, because not only did I had to re-identify with, am I good enough and am I worthy, from a position of being, are you smart enough? You know, are you worthy of success? Are you a good person? But now it was like, am I capable of being a good boyfriend? Am I capable of having a good girlfriend? Am I capable of having good friends? And so I kind of really at 25, 26 years old had to completely redesign my whole life.
It's so interesting because I think that feeling of being good enough, that feeling of being worthy, that feeling of, am I far enough along? That feeling of, am I successful? Am I warranted? I think that's something that all of us go through at some point of our life. And if you haven't gone through it, it's just because you haven't dug deep enough to actually find the pattern yet. Because there's always been something where we've been cut from a team. We've been gotten poor marks on an exam. We've been disciplined or punished by an authority figure. And it established this belief system that success is what's validated, and a quote unquote, if you're watching on video, you see me do air quotes. If you're listening this way, air quotes. If you are successful, you get validated. If you are quote unquote a failure, you get corrected. And I think when we fail to dive deep into that, like I've had the same thing in my life, going through and being the fat kid that was always made fun of, and then going and being the anorexic kid that was always made fun of, and then being cut from all the hockey teams and being traded, and being only time that you're actually exalted is when you sign your scholarship, or you sign your contract, or you win the game, win the championship, go deep. Like these are the things that you're validated for, rather than the effort, rather than the showing up, rather than the consistency, rather than the intentionality. And I think this is such a key and critical and crucial thought process and learning process. How have you been able to take this? And I'm just thinking out loud, literally, as we're going here. How have you been able to take this from your own journey, and how have you parented differently? How have you parented your kids differently knowing this? How have you parented your children? How have you led, coached, and empowered other people's children differently because of knowing this this deep, deep truth?
You know, I love that you actually grouped in parenting and then also coaching and supporting other people, because the approach is the same to everybody. You know, with my children, I'm constantly reminding them that they have the power and the potential to have and to be and to do everything and anything that they want in their life, and that they are the single sole source that is going to determine where it is that they're going. And that, you know, you might want something and it might not pan out in that moment, but that there's a gift in every moment, and that you need to look for the opportunity in the gift that usually only comes in hindsight. But if you continue to stay focused on what it is that you're wanting to do, and you take calculated steps forward, staying grounded in each and every single step along the way, that you're going to be assured success over time. And rather than feeling derailed or allowing somebody else's mood or opinions or thought processes to derail you from where it is that you're wanting to go, you know, that's where we give our power away. And we, from a very young age, I think I remember having this conversation with my son when he was 4 years old. He's 10 today, but had a conversation with him where I said, you know, hurt people hurt people. And a young kid walked up to him and punched him in the face at school, and he couldn't understand why would somebody want to punch him in the face. He just did not understand why anyone would want to do that. And, you know, we talk about what is it like for somebody to inflict some kind of pain, whether that's a teacher calling you stupid, or whether that's a little boy that's 6 or 7 years old that's punching a 4-year-old. That is literally somebody that is in pain, somebody that's struggling, probably has some level of pain or struggle in their personal life, and they're bringing it out in that environment. And, you know, when you can teach that at such a young age and understand that that is the way that the world works, and that somebody else's thoughts or feelings don't have to control your thoughts or your feelings, that you really know and identify with who you are. The greatest compliment that I've ever been given in any of the work I've ever done was my son, his teacher, just sharing that at school there was a kid that was bullying a bunch of children on the playground, and it was like the first or second day of the new year. And my son walked up to this bigger kid, and my son's really small frame like me, and he walked up to this really big boy, and he looked up to him with his face like chest height. He looked up and he said to the bully, he goes, "You're a bully, and you're picking on these kids, and that means you need a friend. And if you want to play with a friend, I'll be your friend. You don't have to pick on people to find a friend. I will play with you. Why don't we go and play?" And he took the kid to go and play like at the climbing set or something like that. And the kid in that moment just stopped bullying. You know, he stopped picking on the other kids and pushing them around. And in his moment, he got a friend. And so, you know, to hear somebody at such a young age to be able to articulate leadership at that level, it means we're doing something right, because other people can't validate who you are. Only you can validate who you are.
I love it. It goes right so hand in hand well with the story I heard from Jesse Itzler, where he actually celebrates effort within his kids, celebrates the efforts of where we don't celebrate A's, we celebrate B's and C's, just as if we celebrate A's. And it goes along the same lines. I don't know if you've ever heard Ryan Leake speak, but he's an amazing speaker, and he comes from the side of the concept of like, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And really coming back to this concept of you can't fail, so you might as well just do whatever it is that you really want to anyways. And in their family, they celebrate failure. And so he was telling this story. His kid is on this AAU basketball team. He's out there. They're down by 2 points, under 5 seconds to go. His kid steps in, goes inside the 3-point lines, takes a step back, puts up the 3 ball. It bounces off the rim, off the backboard, off the rim, and out. And everyone's dejected, and everyone is down. And Ryan runs down the stairs of the stadium, and is like, "Yes, yes!" and just celebrating. And everyone's like, "Why are you celebrating? Like, your son missed the shot." And he's like, "Because he was brave enough to take it." And I'm like, wow, like it literally brought tears to my eyes. And I was just thinking about this is like, that is the mindset that creates champions. That is the mindset that creates something different, because you know where your validation comes from. The truth of the matter is, Rudi, none of us are good enough. None of us are strong enough. None of us are able to carry the load of what's been called to us. And that's why we have to have this deep faith relationship of who created us and why we're here, because none of us alone are good enough. None of us alone are strong enough to handle that. And the moment that we realize that and we can lean on who created us and know that we have been created for greatness, that is when everything starts to change.
Oh my gosh, that's where you find so much power and validity to every moment. You know, something that my wife and I have practiced for many years is at the dinner table, we'll ask our kids, what did you fail at today? And the reason we ask, what have you failed at today? It's making failure not this bad thing. It's like, well, you know, I did this artwork, but it sucked and I had to start over. Great. You did it. It didn't look the way you wanted. You started over. What did you fail at today? Oh, well, I did this math test and I got 3 wrong. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, can we celebrate what you know? And we start focusing in on those areas. And I actually got that through my wife. She had read a book, and I forget the name of the book, where they had said you need to celebrate and stack failures and not stacking just successes, because life is about taking steps forward. But something that I've brought into life and into business is that if you actually look at failure is not taking the shot and not making it. Failure is not taking the shot at all. And so failure is actually inaction, not taking action, not hitting your desired result. And everything else in your life is simply just feedback. So if you're doing something and you didn't get the result, you still did something, we can turn around and look back at, what did you do? Did we like what you did? Can we improve on it? Or can we keep some things the same? What can we change? And that's the entire point of success, because we have steps. We just need to look at which ones did we take, which ones we want to duplicate, and which ones can we replace if we could.
So good. So good. Rudi, when you have people come into you, especially knowing our audience is primarily a lot of business owners, a lot of creators, a lot of people who are just like leading in a multitude of different facets of their life. What is it that you have been able to find that really helps somebody who's struggling with a thought process of who they are, struggling with a thought process of that I am not good enough, that I am living in a state of doubt, that I am living in something that I don't feel solid in? What are some things, and what's a process that you take your own one-on-one clients through, you do at your a lot of your keynotes and your events? What is something that somebody could step into, take some action in, and find a new level of ownership for them that will open a door that maybe right now feels closed?
You know, I love that question so much, because you set it up beautifully a moment ago where you said none of us are perfect. None of us are ever going to feel good enough. None of us are ever going to feel worthy. And that's the thing. It's not, do we feel that way in the moment? It's how long do we allow ourselves to stay feeling that way? And so to answer your question, I need to just give a little more context to anybody that wants to hear the answer to this. We're going to wake up every single day and we're going to feel a certain way. And then our brain is going to then produce an emotional reaction to what it is that we're thinking. Because every time you think a thought, the brain produces a chemical through the limbic brain, puts it into the body, and it interprets that thought into an emotion. The emotion is to tell the body how to respond to the intellectual thought. So we think a thought, we have an emotion. We think a thought, we have an emotion. We think a thought, we have an emotion. And then all the things that are happening inside of our body are the aftermath of the initial thoughts. So if you wake up in the very beginning of the day, you touch your cell phone, you see your bank account's gone down, your stocks have gone down, you turn on the news, you see the latest forest fires, you have a conversation with your business partner, or you check your emails, your client is furious with you, whatever the thing that's happening in your life, every one of those moments that I just mentioned are producing thoughts, and every one of those thoughts are now producing an equivalent emotion that is going into your body. And if you think about what we see when we open up social media, we're getting millions and millions and millions of bits of data that are flooding to us, and we're not in control of what they're making us feel. So if we want to achieve success and we open up social media and we see somebody else has achieved success, and then immediately we're like, oh, well, that's happening for them, but it's not happening for me. I also want to be like that person. And now we don't feel good enough. We don't feel adequate. We open up the bank account and we saw money come out that we weren't expecting, or we don't have the dollar values that we want, and we again don't feel worthy. We go downstairs and we see the living room and the kitchen and everything looks the same, and we feel the same way we did today, that we did yesterday, the day before that. And so a process that I teach, and I actually bring this into entire organizations as big as 30,000 people, and I've even brought them into single, solopreneur companies, is to bring in a process called priming. Every single day, you are waking up and your brain is priming you for how do you want to think and feel today, meaning what is the operating system that you're going to use today. And I teach how to prime for success. Now, priming is a word that I've used or I've cloned, but we've heard it all over for the eons of time. Priming is just the preparation for what it is that's going to be to come. If you're going to paint a wall, you're not just going to take the new paint and throw it up. You're going to first sand the wall. You're going to put a priming layer on that's going to prepare the paint that you're going to be applying later. You're going to sand again. Then you're going to put the new layer of paint on. So there's a process to what it is that we're doing. But when we think about our minds, which is the single thing that's going to drive whether we're going to be successful today or not, how we're going to feel today or not, is going to be driven based on that thought of, am I good enough? Am I worthy? And what we don't realize is the brain is playing a model or a system that was created under the age of 7. And we have to, every single day, change where we're accessing information inside the brain. So I want to simplify the process. If you wake up in the very beginning of your day and you open yourself up to outside stimulation, email, phone calls, news, WhatsApp, Instagram, any of those things, you're going to feel emotions, and they're going to remind you of how you used to feel yesterday, the stock market, the election that's coming up, this person on social media that's lying, any of these things that are happening, all producing emotions in us. Now we're going to feel victimized. We're going to feel berated. We're going to feel not good enough. We're going to feel not worthy. And in the first 20 minutes of the day, the brain sets its dominant state. And that is how you are going to feel the very rest of the day. So if you wake up in the first 20 minutes of the day and you follow my routine of priming, which is where you carefully, calculatedly choose how do you want to feel today, who do you want to be, and you go into a state in your mind before you've spoken to your spouse, before you've touched your phone, before you've done anything, and you create that feeling inside of your mind with your body of what it would feel like to achieve the level of success that you want. And if you could feel that in the first 20 minutes, the brain's going to now pick a new dominant state and put a pin in that emotion, which is exhilaration, joy, fulfillment, success, freedom. And then all of the decision-making process that you make in your life, in your business, throughout the rest of your day is going to be made from the vantage point of I am successful, I'm joyful, I'm abundant, I'm whatever, even if your external environment doesn't match that. And that's just what you do in the very first 20 minutes of the day. The biggest part of what I really bring into people's lives is reminding people that, you have a mental body, which is where you think your thoughts. You have a physical body, which is where the emotions go into your body, but you also have an energetic body. And you're an energetic body that extends anywhere up to 15 feet past you, and it's communicating on your behalf at all times. And if you are thinking a thought that is, I'm struggling, it's not good enough, I'm not worthy, that energetic body is communicating on your behalf. So you can walk into a room in a really nice suit, you can have the perfect, cup of coffee in your hand, but you might walk in and have a conversation with somebody in your emotional state is you don't feel good. They're going to perceive that. They're going to pick up the disconnect between how you look and how you're acting and how they are interpreting how you're feeling. And people don't take that into account enough. Because if you want to be truly successful in life, meaning you want to be the person that walks into a room and everybody loves and everybody wants to do business with you, you've got to align your thoughts, your feelings, and your energetic body all to be the same, because then you've no longer got this incongruence and people are just going to be magnetized to you. Opportunities are going to be magnetized to you. And then you're going to look for evidence in your mind. 10 million bits of data every second, the brain's going to focus in on those 50 to reinforce that you should feel the same. And that's going to be, now you're feeling abundant, you're feeling joyful. And so you're going to continue to find evidence to be abundant and joyful. It's the single greatest thing that we can do every single day.
It's so good because even as you're going through this, like I started to just write things down, and I come back to the way that I do this in the morning is the one question I ask myself every single morning when I wake up is, am I operating in the fruits of the Spirit? Fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. And when I'm able to sit back and go, am I operating in those? I immediately go to a place where I feel anxious, I feel stressed, I feel that I'm not in those. And that is when I come back to, I am the opposite of whatever it is that I'm feeling that's causing that. And so there's a priming there that is just happening accidentally, but it comes back to the truth, knowing that I am not good enough, I am not strong enough, I am not far enough along, whatever this I am not is, so that I can ultimately lean in. Because here's the thing, the opposite of faith is not doubt. I think oftentimes we're taught that if I'm doubting something, then you don't have faith that something can happen. The actual opposite of faith is certainty. Is you want to be certain about an outcome. You want to be certain about what's going to happen. You want to have the prefix to what's ultimately already going to occur. But true faith is understanding that, no, I am exactly who I am. I am exactly who I am. I'm exactly who I need to be. I'm in exactly the right place. I just need to show up in the fruits of the Spirit so that I can step into what's already been prepared for me. And when that happens, life just happens with ease. It doesn't mean it happens easily. It doesn't mean it happens effortless. It just happens with less effort. And you're able to live in that in a great way. So I love what you were talking about, Rudi, because I think it sits so heavily in alignment with what we're all going through, knowing that mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress, the body doesn't know the difference. And thus, how can we align those so that we can operate in ownership?
I mean, I want to add on what you just said, which is so powerful. But I want to use you as an example here for a moment, because your audience, they follow you, which means on some level, they aspire to achieve something that you've achieved. And you've just become a USA Today best-selling author. And that is huge, massive, massive, massive accolade. And so I would argue there are going to be a whole lot of people that are going to hear that. They're going to have read your book, and they're going to now have the aspiration to want to also be a best-selling author. And so this is what I would say. If you wake up in the morning and you immediately remind yourself, I'm not a USA Today best-selling author because I haven't done what Justin just did. Well, there's separation between you and the thing that you want to have, be, do, or achieve. But what if you woke up every single day and you went into your mind and you created the feeling of what would it feel like to have already been a best-selling author, not just having achieved the best-selling status for a week, but to have been a best-selling author and have your book in every single airport all over the world in so many different languages, and you've been on the bestsellers list for 52 weeks. And you get the phone call from your agent that says, hey, just want to let you know it's Wednesday and your book is still on the bestsellers list. It's 52 weeks in a row now. Congratulations. And you hang up that phone call. What would that feel like? What would it feel like not to be the best-selling author in the beginning, but over an extended period of time, to maybe change people's lives, to read the love letters from people where you've healed them, their lives, their bodies. And in that moment, if you can encapsulate that feeling in the first 20 minutes of your day, Now, when you stand up and you go to, I don't know, pen a book, or you sit down by your typewriter or your laptop, you start to type the words as a best-selling author. And if you want to author a book, you've got to become an author. And so many people think they first have to become the best-selling author to feel like a best-selling author. You know, Justin, I would say when you wrote that book, you were already a best-selling author. You were just bringing it from God into form. And there's the difference, because you can't just say, I'm going to write this book and now let's hope I can turn it into a best-selling book. You've got to first become the best-selling author.
So I'm going to validate exactly what you're saying here, Rudi, because I don't know if I've ever told this story on this podcast, but 4 years ago, I launched my fourth book. It was called Blueprint. It was my first thing that I did after stepping out of the NHL. And I took out downtown headquarters of Lululemon and went and sent out all the invites. I had sponsors come. I had chairs all set up. I had a camera crew, videographer, and a photographer. I had somebody that was going to open for me. Sent out all the invites. 42 people had RSVP'd yes. 7 o'clock came. 7:30 came. 8 o'clock came. Not a soul showed up. Nobody came. 0 people. 0. And I said to everybody there, I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. I said this with like tears in my eyes. I said, I'm so sorry. But I'd like to present anyways, as if the room is full. And some of them rolled their eyes. Some of them were frustrated. And I delivered the talk just as if I was with a bunch of people there. And at the very end, I said to the videographer, I said, one day I will be a best-selling author and the room will be full. And he goes, okay, kid, can I leave now? And I tell that story because that was 4 years ago. 4 years ago. But it was the mindset is I'm already a best-selling author. It is just a matter of time and consistently and intentionally doing the thing that's going to get you there, so that ultimately at the end of the day, you realize the outcomes. But at first you have to believe that this is where it's at. And I did it in a time when nobody would have ever batted an eye twice or ever thought twice of being like, oh, Justin, if you want to give this up, like, now's a good time. You just got shut out. Like, literally nobody showed up for this event. But obviously that wasn't the belief, and that wasn't the calling that God had on my life. And everybody listening to this, there's something in your life that you're called to step out into and you're called to step into so that you can ultimately impact people in a powerful way.
You know, I wish you to share that story as many times as you possibly can, because there's so much value in that. How many people would quit after the first book? How many people wouldn't have even written the book? And you wrote your fourth book, and then you host this event and no one shows up, and then you still went through with the event. And here's the thing, you know, somebody did show up, but in the most unsuspecting way. You did. You showed up. But I don't believe that Justin today would be Justin today if he didn't show up that day and every other day 100%. In between. And so kudos to you, man. What a great story and what a great inspiration.
Rudi, First, you're somebody who embodies what we talk about here at Own It and on the Own It show so much, is somebody who lives in ownership, somebody who lives it, embodies it, breathes it, not just somebody who teaches it and talks about it, but it's a part of who you are. When you talk about who are you, or like the great I am, like what does that look like? That is you. You are ownership. And so if I was to ask you in a word or a phrase, how would you define ownership?
In a word or a phrase? Oh, I don't know if I could ever articulate anything in a word and or a phrase. You know, ownership to me is about finding value and meaning in why you're here. And that I believe that you are connected to the tapestry that created everything that has ever been, ever was, and will ever be. And the sheer fact that you are here right now in this time and in this space means that there's a divinity to that moment. And because you're here, there's something really, really unique and important that you have to bring forward out and into the world. But you wouldn't be qualified to be that person if you didn't have all these different things that had happened and transpired But because they've happened, they've qualified you, they've prepared you. And unless you take ownership and accountability for who you are, everything you've ever done, everything you've ever said, you're never going to get to be the person that you are meant to be. And that in being that person is really where you find the validation in your life, because that's giving selflessly of yourself in every day, in every single way. We are the sum total of every thought and feeling and decision that we've ever had. But if we're not going to take accountability for every thought, feeling, and every decision, we're never going to get to the person that we aspire to be. And so that was a very long answer. But I want everybody to walk away thinking, how can I show up as the best version of myself today? How can I be the best person that I came here to be? And how can I take accountability for that right now?
Guys, you have to be able to find value and meaning in who you are, and that everything that you're going through is simply preparing you for what you've already been called for and what's already prepared for you. And so step into that boldly, step into that confidently, knowing that you're going in the right direction. Rudi, where can everybody find you? Where can everybody get a hold of you? When can everybody dive deeper into who and all Rudi is so that they can continue to step into something more powerfully?
I am on all social handles at Rudi Riekstins, which is RudiRiekstins. You and I share those long last names. And at rudiriekstins.com. I would obviously welcome to hear from anybody. As we bring this to a close, I want to ask your audience to do me the biggest favor possible, and that is to rate and review the Own It podcast, because, the easiest barrier to entry for a podcast listener to say thank you for the value that they get week after week is to smash 5 stars and just to share it, like it, subscribe. And it's the greatest thing that we could do for Justin right now. And so from me to you, man, I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. And I want to challenge your audience to right now, if they haven't already done so, rate and review this incredible podcast, this platform, because every single week he gets out here, he pours into you hundreds of shows, all in the pursuit of your further development. And the least you can do is say thank you by smashing 5 stars.
Well, thank you, Rudi. It's like I said, guys, I love this guy just because he's different. Like, he gets on a show and you've seen him plug me and honor me in a multitude of different ways. And I value that. I appreciate that. It's something different about you. And when you go about life differently, it's just showing that God's shining through you. And I just appreciate the way that you show up and just everything that you do. So thank you for being you, and everybody out there. Take his prompt, because it's as a podcaster and somebody who's constantly putting out content, it's really what we honestly ask is it's the small things like that make us be able to reach more people and impact more people, which is really what our goal is at the end of the day. So don't be a spectator, don't be a fan, don't be a media person, but be a player. Like, get in the game, participate, be an active participant, and that's the way you can participate here. So guys, as you step forward, taking what Rudi has talked about, I want to ask you, what is it that you want to be? Who is it that you want to become? What is it that you're called to step into? Because whatever belief you have of yourself, is it that you're not far enough along? Is it that you're not good enough? Is it that you're not worthy? That is the anchor that's holding you back to become the person that you were ultimately created to be, to impact the people who you were meant to be the miracle for. And the moment that you start to change the narrative, the moment that you start to celebrate who you are, celebrate where you're at, celebrate the moment that you're in, that's when everything begins to change. And so making sure that the mind mimics the heart, mimics the body, creates the alignment that will ultimately get you to where you want to be, so that you can take ownership and live a life that is different, making sure that you have value and meaning in who you are, because you were created for a mission, you were created for a purpose, you were created for value. That's not an if, that is just a when you decide to own it. We know success is different, so own your different, and we'll see you guys next week.